From the moment you wake up in the morning, every choice you make, every opportunity you chase, and every relationship you allow into your life is filtered through one invisible lens, your sense of what you believe you deserve. Not what you consciously want, but what your subconscious has been programmed to accept as normal for someone like you. This is the silent sabotage that Owen Hermstring identifies early in The Law Behind the Laws, where he writes, "You're not punished for your past. You're punished by your pattern." At first glance, many people assume their external results are the outcome of hard work, intelligence, or even luck. But Hermstring challenges that assumption by introducing the core idea that the energy you radiate through belief, not desire, is what sets the boundaries of your reality. You may want wealth, but if deep down you still carry the emotional signature of scarcity, your subconscious will sabotage every chance you get to receive abundance. That's not because you're weak. It's because your programming says you don't belong in that reality. Most of this programming begins in childhood. As Hermstring explains, the subconscious mind is like wet cement during your first 7 years of life. Every word spoken by a parent, every emotion absorbed from the environment, and every unspoken rule about love, money, and safety gets etched into your energetic identity. If you grew up in a household where love was conditional, your subconscious learned that you must earn love, and that you're not worthy of it just by being. Later in life, that belief becomes a pattern. You tolerate partners who make you prove yourself. You overgive, you under-receive. Not because you want to, but because it feels familiar. And familiarity, in Hermstring's framework, is the gateway to your reality. That's why he insists that the key to transformation isn't to chase external things harder. It's to become radically aware of the belief structures that live in the background of your mind, especially the ones that feel like just the way life is. One of his most powerful lines is this: "Your comfort zone is just your trauma dressed in routine." If your inner compass is set to survive, not thrive, then any breakthrough will feel threatening, and your subconscious will pull you back to the old identity every time. But how do you identify these sabotaging beliefs? Hermstring suggests paying attention to where your life feels stuck on repeat. Do your relationships always end the same way? Do you earn more money but still feel broke? Do you fear being seen, even as you long to be chosen? These are not coincidences. These are echoes of what you truly believe you're allowed to have. He gives a striking example in the book of a woman who couldn't hold on to a loving partner. On the surface, she appeared confident, successful, emotionally aware. But every time a man got too close, she'd feel anxious, suffocated, and look for reasons to end things. In therapy, she uncovered a belief: men leave when you need them most. This came from watching her father abandon the family after her mother's cancer diagnosis. Once she recognized this story, she could rewrite it, but not before. Until then, she was locked in the pattern of rejecting love before it could reject her. This is what Hermstring means when he says, "The subconscious doesn't care what you want. It enforces what you believe is safe." And for most people, safety equals sameness. It's not about joy. It's about predictability. The irony is, what you fear losing is often the very thing you never truly had: peace, abundance, freedom. To break this cycle, Hermstring outlines a 3-step method: awareness, emotional excavation, and energetic replacement. Awareness means identifying the belief. Excavation means feeling the original wound that created it. And replacement means installing a new belief, not just mentally but emotionally, so your frequency changes from the inside out. In his words, the only thing more powerful than a belief is an emotionally charged new truth. That truth might be, "I deserve to be supported," or "I am safe even when I receive more." But it must be felt, not just said. You can't outthink a wound, but you have to feel it to heal it. And once that shift happens, reality begins to bend in ways that seem magical to the outside world. But inside, you know it's just alignment. The sabotage ends when you stop betraying your own worth. You've likely heard phrases like, "life is a mirror," or "your outer world reflects your inner world." But Owen Hermstring takes this idea far deeper in The Law Behind the Laws, exposing a truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Your reality is not responding to your desires, it's responding to your identity. At the heart of this concept is what Hermstring calls the mirror effect. He explains that the universe, energy, and even the people around you are constantly reflecting back what you have accepted as normal for yourself. Not consciously, but unconsciously. This means that if you've normalized chaos, you'll attract chaos. If you've normalized emotional unavailability, you'll find yourself in relationships that reinforce that, not because you want them, but because they match the image in your internal mirror. The terrifying part? You can only receive what you subconsciously agree to. Hermstring shares a compelling metaphor. Imagine holding a mirror up to your face, but you've just finished painting your face red. You look into the mirror, see red, and scream, "I want blue," but you never wipe off the red paint. Instead, you keep shouting at the reflection, hoping it will change. This, he says, is what most people do with their lives. They try to manifest a new job, a better relationship, a healthier body, without ever shifting the self-image that produced the old one. The world doesn't change because you want it to. It changes because you do. There's a passage in the book that reads, "If your inner belief is that success means abandonment, your mirror will only show you missed opportunities." In other words, even when doors open, your subconscious might not walk through them. It doesn't feel safe. And because the mirror cannot reflect anything that isn't present within, your reality remains locked in the same patterns. But how do these internal beliefs get installed? Hermstring traces most of them back to three primary sources: early emotional wounds, repeated environmental conditioning, and inherited narratives from authority figures, parents, teachers, religion, culture. By the time we reach adulthood, we're not operating from choice, we're operating from imprint. If you were praised only when you achieved something, you might believe love is earned through performance. If your caregivers modeled insecurity, you may unconsciously adopt fear as your emotional baseline. And since energy seeks familiarity, you recreate that dynamic again and again. One client example in the book stood out. A man desperately wanted to grow his business. He worked long hours, invested in courses, and even hired a mentor. But no matter what he did, he remained stuck at a certain income level. During a coaching session, Hermstring asked him to close his eyes and describe what it felt like to earn more. The man paused and said, "It feels like I'd be leaving my father behind." That sentence exposed the real mirror. Success, adverse disloyalty. So his subconscious ensured that he'd never cross the line, even while his conscious mind begged for more. This illustrates Hermstring's principle. You can't receive what you resent or fear becoming. Until that belief was addressed, the mirror could only reflect his loyalty, not his potential. The way forward, then, is not to manipulate the mirror. It's to change the face looking into it. Hermstring offers a process called inner image recalibration, which involves identifying the core emotional tone of your self-image. Not what you say about yourself, but what you feel when you're alone, when no one's watching, when life is quiet. That feeling is your frequency. And frequency, not affirmations, is what the mirror reflects. So if your current life feels full of rejection, conflict, limitation, ask yourself, where have I accepted this as normal? Where have I allowed this dynamic to become just the way things are? Because once you stop blaming the mirror and start cleansing the image within, everything around you begins to shift, not through force, but through resonance. Hermstring summarizes this beautifully. When the inner script changes, the actors leave the stage. New ones enter. The story rewrites itself. That's the power of the mirror effect. You don't need to fight your life. You need to face it as a reflection and choose to become the version of you that your future is waiting for. One of the most frustrating experiences in life is desiring something with your whole heart, visualizing it daily, believing it's coming, and still not seeing any sign of it in the real world. According to Owen Hermstring, in The Law Behind the Laws, this isn't because the universe is ignoring you. It's because wanting and receiving operate on two completely different frequencies, and until you shift from one to the other, you remain trapped in what he calls the frequency loop. Hermstring defines the frequency loop as the invisible gap between desiring something and becoming energetically aligned with it. When you're in the state of wanting, you're actually vibrating in lack. You are broadcasting a message that says, "I don't have this yet." And the universe, which responds not to words but to frequency, matches that signal perfectly. So you keep receiving experiences that confirm the absence of what you want. More waiting, more longing, More almost but not yet moments. In his words, desire opens the door, but identity walks through it. This means that wanting something is only the first step. If your inner identity doesn't match the reality you're trying to manifest, the result is a kind of energetic repulsion. You might get glimpses or temporary results, but they won't stick. You'll sabotage the opportunity, dismiss it as a fluke, or energetically reject it because it doesn't feel familiar. The frequency loop traps millions of people in a cycle of hope, followed by disappointment, followed by self-doubt, and back again. One of the most illuminating examples Hermstring shares is a woman who had been trying to attract a healthy, emotionally available partner for years. She journaled, did affirmations, even wrote letters to her future husband. But every man she met mirrored the same pattern: hot and cold, unavailable, dismissive. During their coaching session, Hermstring asked her a question that shattered her narrative. What would being truly loved require you to give up? After a long silence, she whispered, "Control." That moment revealed everything. Her desire was pure, but her frequency was set to self-protection. Deep down, she didn't feel safe receiving what she claimed to want, so her energy kept attracting people who allowed her to maintain control by keeping them at a distance. This is what Hermstring means when he says, "Your dominant frequency always wins, not your dominant desire." The subconscious doesn't care about what you write in your journal. It only responds to what feels familiar, safe, and emotionally true. And so long as receiving your desire feels dangerous, unfamiliar, or undeserved, your energy will block it, no matter how hard your mind tries to call it in. The shift, then, is not to want more intensely, but to feel as if it's already done. This is not the same as blind faith. It's about emotional resonance. Hermstring advises that when visualizing your goal, don't ask, "How will it happen?" Ask instead, "What version of me would naturally experience this?" Step into that self, not in fantasy, but in alignment. What are their boundaries? How do they speak? How do they walk into a room? What are their daily habits, their tone of voice, their emotional baseline? These are the micro-frequencies that tell the universe who you really are. He writes, "The universe doesn't believe your dreams, it believes your tone." In other words, your internal tone, your underlying emotional state, is the real broadcast. You can shout affirmations all day, but if your emotional tone is set to fear, scarcity, or unworthiness, the universe will reflect that, not out of cruelty, but out of coherence. Energy seeks coherence above all. To break the loop, Hermstring offers a daily exercise he calls receiving rehearsal. For 5 minutes a day, you close your eyes and imagine that your desire has already arrived, not in words, but in feelings. You practice holding the emotional tone of already having it: gratitude, peace, safety, confidence. You anchor that tone into your body even if it feels unfamiliar, because as Hermstring says, repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates safety, and safety is the gatekeeper of manifestation. This shift is subtle but transformative. Instead of striving to get something, you begin to become the kind of person who naturally receives it. You stop begging and start embodying. You stop chasing and start aligning. And slowly, the frequency loop begins to dissolve. Hermstring concludes the chapter by reminding us that wanting is not the problem. It's staying stuck in wanting that creates suffering. The universe responds instantly to congruence, and congruence happens when your thoughts, emotions, identity, and actions are all speaking the same language. That's when reality bends, not because you forced it, but because you finally matched it. Most people believe their problems stem from external circumstances: lack of money, toxic relationships, bad timing. But Owen Hermstring suggests something far more disruptive. The true cost of your suffering is identity debt. According to him, every time you live in contradiction to your authentic self, when you shrink, hide, fake, overperform, or betray your inner truth, you accumulate a subtle energetic debt. This debt doesn't appear on your credit report, but it weighs down your entire frequency. It creates emotional interest payments in the form of fatigue, confusion, anxiety, and misaligned outcomes. The more you betray who you truly are, the more out of sync your life becomes, until eventually it feels like everything is working against you, even when you're doing everything right. Hermstring explains that identity debt is not caused by malice or weakness. It's a survival mechanism. From an early age, we're taught to fit in, to please, to adapt. We're rewarded for performance, not presence. For example, a child who learns that expressing anger leads to punishment might suppress it and replace it with politeness. A teenager who feels abandoned might adopt a hyper-independent persona. Over time, these protective masks become identities. We forget they were ever strategies, and the longer we wear them, the more separated we become from who we really are. But the universe doesn't respond to the version of you that you've constructed. It responds to the version of you that you actually are. Hermstring puts it bluntly. Energy is truth-sensitive. You can't manifest abundance while secretly believing you're a burden. You can't attract love while performing a role that hides your needs. You can't align with peace while constantly outsourcing your worth to external approval. When your internal truth and external behavior are misaligned, the energetic field around you becomes incoherent. And incoherence leads to chaos, stagnation, or collapse. He uses a powerful metaphor. Identity debt is like wearing a mask underwater. At first, it helps you breathe in unfamiliar environments, but eventually it leaks, and when it does, the very thing that once protected you becomes what's suffocating you. The longer you wear the mask, the harder it is to remove without pain. But keeping it on guarantees emotional bankruptcy. Hermstring shares a story of a client who was a successful CEO. On the outside, he had everything: wealth, status, admiration. But internally, he felt empty, disconnected, and deeply exhausted. No matter what he achieved, it didn't stick emotionally. In their work together, it was revealed that he had built his empire not from inspiration, but from trauma. As a child, he was told he would never amount to anything. His entire adult life had been a rebuttal to that voice. Every deal, every milestone was a performance. And though he succeeded outwardly, he never felt it inwardly. His wins didn't land because the self who created them wasn't real. He was in deep identity debt. This is the hidden cost many high performers pay. They chase success not as a natural extension of their being, but as a way to prove their worth. And because of that, even their victories feel hollow. Hermstring says, if success costs you yourself, it's not success, it's self-exile. The solution is not to burn it all down, but to reconcile, to identify where you've betrayed your truth and begin the sacred process of repayment, not through punishment, but through realignment. The first step is radical self-honesty. You must ask, whose dream am I living? Is it yours, or is it a role you adopted to gain love, safety, or approval? Where are you out of alignment, not because you're lazy, but because your soul is tired of performing? Hermstring urges readers to look for the places in their life where they feel the most drained. Fatigue, he says, is often the body's protest against untruth. It's not that you're doing too much, it's that you're doing what's not aligned with who you are. He introduces the idea of identity audit, a simple but uncomfortable practice. Write down all the roles you play: parent, partner, friend, worker, leader. Then write how you show up in each. Are you honest? Are you open? Do you set boundaries? Or do you disappear behind what you think you're supposed to be? Most people discover they're living from a persona, not from presence, and that's the beginning of liberation. Repaying identity debt doesn't happen overnight. It requires courageous decisions. Saying no when you're used to pleasing, resting when you're used to hustling, speaking when you're used to staying silent, letting go of roles that no longer fit, even if they once saved you. But as you shed these false layers, something miraculous happens. Energy returns, clarity rises, opportunities appear. Because the universe, as Hermstring reminds us, always funds the truth. He writes, when you remember who you are, the world remembers how to treat you. That is the final payoff. When you stop betraying yourself, the world stops betraying you. You attract people, places, and events that mirror your inner wholeness. Life becomes a reflection of coherence, not compensation. You no longer hustle to prove, you align to receive. And in that state, manifestation is no longer a technique, it becomes your natural state. One of the most frustrating experiences for someone on the path of conscious manifestation is this. You finally attract what you've been asking for, whether it's a relationship, money, recognition, or opportunity, but it slips away just as quickly as it arrived. You sabotage it, you freeze up, you downplay it, or circumstances conspire to push it out of your life. Owen Hermstring calls this the energetic threshold, a subtle but powerful ceiling that determines how much you're able to hold based on the frequency you currently embody. This isn't a punishment, It's an energetic law. You don't just need to be a vibrational match to attract something, you must become a vibrational container that can sustain it. That's the difference between momentary wins and lasting transformation. Hermstring writes, "Manifestation without readiness is spiritual cruelty." The universe delays what would destroy you if delivered too early. Many people blame external circumstances when things fall apart after initial success. But the truth lies deeper. If your identity still carries the weight of unworthiness, guilt, or fear, then every new level of abundance will trigger emotional resistance. You might feel like an imposter. You may subconsciously self-destruct to return to familiar suffering. Hermstring refers to this as the identity recoil, a subconscious retreat into the known whenever your reality starts to exceed what you believe you deserve. Think of your energetic threshold like a thermostat. You may temporarily increase your income or attract love, but if your inner programming is still set to struggle or loneliness, the temperature will regulate. You'll unconsciously act, feel, and speak in ways that sabotage the elevation. That's why so many lottery winners lose their fortune, why sudden fame destroys people, and why dream relationships collapse under emotional immaturity. In The Law Behind the Laws, Hermstring gives a powerful analogy. Your current frequency is like the floor of a building. You keep wishing for the penthouse view without upgrading the foundation. Even if the elevator takes you up, you won't be able to stay. The structure below can't hold it. The painful truth is this: until you raise your energetic baseline, anything higher than that will feel unsafe to your nervous system. And what feels unsafe, you'll unconsciously push away. So how do you raise your threshold? First, by observing how you react to blessings. Do you receive praise awkwardly or reject it? Do you push love away when it feels too intimate? Do you feel anxious when money comes in large amounts? These reactions are signs that your identity isn't yet aligned with the new frequency. Hermstring encourages using these emotional triggers as training grounds. The universe isn't testing you, it's revealing you. Second, you must rewire your emotional responses through repetition and exposure. That means staying present in the discomfort of growth, letting success feel normal instead of foreign, practicing self-worth when nothing outside validates it, choosing not to apologize for your joy, peace, or abundance. Slowly, the nervous system recalibrates. The energetic floor rises. You become someone who can not only reach higher frequencies, but live there. Hermstring emphasizes that this process takes time. It requires self-compassion, discipline, and conscious embodiment. You don't need to be perfect to receive, just stable. He says, you don't attract what you visualize, you attract what you regulate. If peace is still foreign, chaos will feel like home. If intimacy scares you, detachment will feel safer. The goal is to expand your nervous system's capacity to hold what you've asked for. That's why spiritual teachings often focus on character, integrity, humility. Not because they're moral checkpoints, but because they build the strength needed to stay at elevated frequencies without collapsing under the weight. Manifestation is not a magical download, it's an energetic promotion. And like any promotion, it comes with responsibilities. When you become a vibrational match for abundance, but also a container strong enough to maintain it, you exit the cycle of temporary highs and painful lows. Your threshold rises, your identity stabilizes, and life responds in kind. In the end, Hermstring leaves us with a haunting question. What parts of your life have you been asking for upgrades, but subconsciously rejecting because your frequency isn't ready to receive? Everything you attract, every opportunity, every relationship, every dollar, every emotion is filtered through one persistent lens, the way you see yourself. Owen Hermstring calls this the identity frequency, a hidden vibrational signature that's not defined by what you want, but by what you believe you are. This is why, as he states in The Law Behind the Laws, you will never rise above the identity you are loyal to, no matter how hard you try. Your self-image is the energetic gatekeeper of your life. If you see yourself as unworthy, no amount of affirmations will sustain abundance. If you see yourself as broken, every attempt at love will be filtered through a fear of rejection. Hermstring argues that the universe doesn't respond to the masks you wear, it responds to the beliefs you harbor at your core. This is why people can do everything right externally, work hard, visualize, pray, hustle, but still feel like they're running in place, because energetically, they're still broadcasting the same story. I'm not enough, I don't belong, I always lose. This inner frequency is so subtle, it often goes unnoticed. We think we're manifesting with clarity, but we're leaking doubt in every breath. We try to impress, but deep down feel like frauds. We chase success while secretly believing we're undeserving. Hermstring calls this the silent override, the quiet voice within that edits every vibration before it reaches the field. Your subconscious, he writes, is not impressed by your vision board. It's impressed by the emotional home you return to every night. One of the most dangerous illusions is the belief that identity is fixed, that you were born with certain traits, limitations, or worth. But identity is programmable, moldable, expandable, and most importantly, it's optional. Hermstring insists, the version of you that's suffering is a construct. You've worn it so long you forgot you could take it off. That is both liberating and terrifying, because it places the responsibility back in your hands. So how do you shift the identity frequency? The process begins with radical honesty. You must ask, who do I believe I am when no one is watching? What story do I play on repeat in the silence? What reality am I defending with my thoughts? Most people find that their dominant identity was formed in childhood, shaped by trauma, authority figures, or social programming, and unless consciously challenged, it runs the show indefinitely. Hermstring recommends beginning with identity disruptions, deliberate moments where you act against your old programming. If you normally downplay your voice in meetings, speak up. If you always expect rejection, assume acceptance. If your self-concept is, I'm bad with money, start treating small amounts with reverence and gratitude. Each act is like a chisel breaking away the stone of the old self. Over time, these micro acts of rebellion shift your emotional baseline. You begin to gather evidence for a new story. Maybe I am seen, maybe I do belong, maybe I can trust myself, and with each new imprint, the subconscious begins to soften its grip. Hermstring explains, your reality is not a mirror of your goals, it's a mirror of your identity. Upgrade the signal, and the response must follow. But here's the trap. Most people want a new life with the same identity. They want to feel confident while clinging to shame. They want to feel wealthy while broadcasting lack. They want unconditional love while still fearing abandonment. This creates an energetic conflict that delays manifestation and fuels inner sabotage. You cannot build a palace on a foundation that believes it deserves a cage. The breakthrough happens when you stop trying to change outcomes and start changing your identity. You begin asking, what kind of person lives in this reality I desire? How do they speak, act, breathe, and think? And then you become them, not after you get the result, but before. That's the paradox of spiritual manifestation. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you already are. Hermstring puts it best. You don't become successful to believe you're worthy. You believe you're worthy, and success becomes the inevitable echo. In that one sentence lies the core of the identity shift. Not hope, not hustle, but deep internal alignment. So today, instead of asking, why isn't the universe giving me what I want? Ask, what identity am I still protecting that no longer serves me? That's the moment your frequency changes. That's the moment the world begins to respond. One of the most startling realizations from Owen Hermstring's The Law Behind the Laws is this. The universe doesn't respond to what you wish for, it responds to what you believe you deserve. This is what he calls the deservingness equation, and it explains why so many people live lives far below their potential, not because they're lazy or unlucky or unworthy, but because deep down they've placed a limit on what they're willing to allow. Deservingness is not about morality. It's not about whether you're a good person or if you've worked hard enough. It's an energetic setting that governs how much love, abundance, joy, or success you're willing to receive. Hermstring argues that most people unknowingly carry invisible ceilings, subconscious boundaries that whisper, this is too much, that's for other people, or I'm not ready for that kind of happiness. And because the universe is always attuned to the signal of allowance, not desire, it respects those boundaries completely. Hermstring puts it bluntly. The universe never violates your self-imposed limits. You tell it what to deliver by what you're willing to hold. In other words, if you secretly feel like a fraud, it doesn't matter how big your goals are, you'll find a way to sabotage them. If you long for a healthy relationship but deep down feel unlovable, you'll unconsciously repel intimacy. If you chase money but associate wealth with guilt or corruption, you'll leak abundance as fast as it arrives. This is where people get stuck in the manifesting cycle. They focus on wanting, scripting, and visualizing, while ignoring the emotional friction underneath. Hermstring calls this vibrational betrayal, when your affirmations say one thing, but your body, thoughts, and actions are broadcasting another. And because the universe reads the dominant frequency, not the words you speak, it mirrors the energy of undeservingness, not your scripted desires. So how do you raise your ceiling of deservingness? First, you must locate it. Identify the moments when receiving feels uncomfortable, when compliments make you shrink, when opportunities cause anxiety instead of joy, when silence after success breeds guilt. These are clues that your system is rejecting expansion, not because you're ungrateful, but because the old identity doesn't feel safe in the new vibration. Hermstring writes, "We don't fear failure. We fear the implications of success, because they threaten the story we've clung to." Next, you must normalize the energy of more. Instead of striving for massive leaps, practice becoming comfortable with incremental abundance. If you resist praise, allow yourself to receive it without deflecting. If generosity feels threatening, start with small acts of receiving without over-explaining. If money brings tension, sit with it longer. Let it feel safe. Let it feel normal. Deservingness is not about proving yourself. It's about expanding your nervous system's capacity to hold more without collapsing. One of the most powerful tools Hermstring offers is what he calls the mirror threshold. It's a simple practice. Imagine the life you say you want, fully lived in detail, and notice when your body flinches. That moment of flinch is where your ceiling begins. That's the place you must sit with, breathe through and rewrite, because until that version of life feels emotionally neutral, it won't become energetically sustainable. The last step is self-forgiveness. Many people secretly punish themselves for past choices, missed opportunities, or internalized shame. They unconsciously block blessings because they believe they haven't suffered enough, earned enough, or healed enough. But Hermstring is clear. You don't heal by withholding love from yourself. You heal by allowing the life that reflects who you've now become, not who you once were. The deservingness equation doesn't change by hustling harder. It changes by raising your standards of what you'll allow, not with entitlement, but with sacred remembrance. You are not here to earn your place. You are here to remember it. In the end, the most powerful shift is this. Stop asking the universe to bring you what you want, and start aligning with what you'll let in. When your energy says, "I allow," the universe responds with, "As you wish."